Okay, so now that we've added our stepper in, let's go ahead and add a slider to our UI view. And a UI slider, if you haven't seen one before, if you go UI slider, what that is basically a track with a thumb on it and a minimum and a maximum image here. So this allows you to just kind of slide through the value. Typically is used within like volume things or display things, as you can see here. And if you've used an iOS device before, you may be actually familiar with what this looks like. Now you can customize quite a few things here. You can customize the minimum value image, the maximum value image. You can customize what this thumb looks like, what color it is, and you can customize the track itself. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and give it some minimum amount of changes to make it look pretty decently. And so what we'll do is we'll create a new instance of this UI slider, and UI slider .ui .new, and then we're going to set that slider. The first thing you can set is its value, and the value I'm going to set as 3, and that's where the thumb is going to be positioned. So we have that value. This is where its current value is going to be. And just to kind of show you, that thumb will be at wherever 3 would be on the minimum to maximum scale. So now that we've set the value, we'll go ahead and we'll set the minimum. And if we go back to UI sliders, we got the minimum value and the maximum value. So my minimum will be 0 and my maximum will be 100. Okay, now that we've set those values, let's go ahead and set the minimum value image. These are going to be UI images, so it's going to be instance of UI images. And so what we need to do is we need to set that as UI image, and you can see that it needs to be UI image based on this Objective-C declaration. And we can go ahead and click through the UI image in the documentation, and I see that we can go ahead and load it with an image named. So this returns an image object associated with the specified file name. So it's going to return that image to us. And I've already downloaded and placed some images into our resources here. And basically this is a volume icon that you can get from Font Awesome. So if you go to fontawesome.github.io and you go to icons here and you go ahead and you search for volume, the two icons that I just took a screenshot of them and I placed those screenshots into my resources folder. So I took the volume up and the volume off, and you'll see how that's used in just a moment. So I'll go back into my code here, and I'm going to use the minimum value image will be the volume off. So volume and off, and you'll notice that I don't have to include the extension here. I just give the name for that. So what I'll do next is I'll set the maximum image value. So I'll go back into my slider and set the maximum value image here. And basically this will be the volume on. So you'll see that again, that's in the resources folder here, volume off and volume up. Oops, volume up. Okay, now that we've got that set, we want to make sure that our frame is set for this as well. So let's go ahead and paste that in there. Frame, and we'll just paste this down quite a bit. So I'll change this to 20, and I'll change this to 400, and this will be 300 in width. And let's go ahead and add the sub view of this slider, and let's see how this looks. Okay, so we have the value, minimum value, minimum value image, maximum value image, and frame. Okay, add some two. Cool. So we'll see that we got the minimum image, maximum image, and you see that these are just kind of lousy screenshots that I've just placed in there. And this probably would look better if the background was white. So if I go ahead and I use my command key and I click on this red area right here, you'll see that the second view, UI view, was selected. And if I go self.background color equals white color, oops, UI white color, UI color dot white color. Okay, and that changes. And that does look a lot better with those image screenshots in there. So what I'll do is I'll just take this and I'll just paste that over to our second view controller, and let's see, our second view UI view. And then what we'll do is, now that we have that set up, so now that we have this slider set up, we want to display its value. And I'm going to display it both within the REPL and on a label, just like we did earlier. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this label here, and I'll paste that in. I'm going to take this down to 450, so it's right below the slider. And what I'll do is I'll keep this, I'll change this to 3, so since that's what it's starting at the value up here. And then what I'll do is I'll change this to a slider. And you know what? I'll just select these. Okay, so slider dot label. Great. So we'll need to go ahead and include both the slider and the slider label with the adder accessor. So slider and slider label. Okay, cool. So that is set up for us. Now what we'll do is we'll go into our load view area. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and paste this below. And what we're going to do is change this to slider, since we're targeting our slider object. And what I'll do is I'll change this to slider value. And then I'll go ahead and just copy this here, copy and paste, since we're going to be doing a very similar thing. And then we'll change this to slider, change this to slider value, and this will be slider as well. All right, so that should set things up for us. I do want to take note of these 4 control events here. So because we don't have to pass in a delegate, what happens with these, so because these objects don't need a delegate with them, they actually submit an event when it's changed. So I'd recommend reading up on that. If you go to the UISlider and you go to sliders, we'll see that if we scroll down, behavior of sliders, sliders do not need a delegate to function properly. They send a UI control event value changed when the value has changed. So when a user has interacted with it, then it triggers this event. That's why you're able to work with it, and that's why you're able to, when you change it, have that target be, or have that action be applied. So that's the event that we're working with here with these 3 UI objects. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now with that saved, what we can do, let's exit out of that and restart it here. And we should have a working slider. All right, so add to do, it's set at 3. You'll see that it's moved to the right a little bit. That's great. Now if we scroll, what just happened? So let's scroll back up here and let's see, slider undefined method, slider value. Should be slider label. Okay, slider label. Let's make sure that's correct. All right, and rake. And let's see, they should run correctly now. Okay. All right, so we are getting a float as the number here. And so that doesn't look too pretty on the actual view. Now, within the REPL, it looks fine, but what we might want to do is change that to an integer using our toInteger Ruby function here. And what we'll do is we'll exit and we'll rake it one more time, and that'll rebuild. And this should give us an integer. All right, so that's a lot cleaner to work with. So one thing you'll notice with sliding this to the right and the left is that you're getting all these changes and the numbers changing continuously. So as you slide it, it'll change. And by default, it has a property known as continuous, and this is set to true. So by default value, the property is set to yes, which is true. And so because this takes a Boolean, we can actually change this. So if we copy this and we move this over into our slider here, what we can do is take the slider and set the continuous to false. And if we restart this, we'll see that instead of the number continuing to change as we move it, it will change only once we drop it. So once we let go, then the number will change. If we let go again, number will change over and over if you carry it and let go. So we can go ahead and change that to true or false as needed. I'm going to go ahead and set this back to true. I just like how that works. And then I'll go ahead and I'll save my changes. But you can go ahead and change all of these values here, the slider appearances, the tint color, thumb color, current thumb image, things like that. I recommend playing around with it a little bit, or at least reading through the documentation. So that's pretty fun to get that slider up. I will see you in the next video.